This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut and the occasional pop-in Sebastian Romero. On this week's Weigh-In, we talk about, this week's Takedown Thursday. We talk about Iowa State takes down Iowa. And we talked about that on the last Takedown Thursday. This was going to be a dual meet that was going to come out close. And to give it to you, it was a 20 Iowa State, 14 Iowa dual meet. And we're going to break down the what's the hows and everything surrounding that because it was pretty good. So we'll go ahead and give our opinion to that dual meet. But nonetheless, and then whatever else comes up in the time of recording, I always say that because, we always sometimes get sidetracked. But nonetheless, that is this week's Takedown Thursdays, an episode of the Weigh-In. So if we jump right into this one, I know that's one of my most favorite words used here. We jump right in. So we're going to jump into this one. So first and foremost, they started at 285, which was, we talked about this. We might have talked about this, but I thought this, if we didn't talk about it, 285 was the starting point. So, I was, there were some things I was right about. Dean Peterson was able to beat Steve O'Poulin, which was really good. Now, what I was also right about, I think I said this, Evan Frost over Drake Ayala. So let's just get down to this. So first of all, Younger Bastia won 11-1 over Ben Cuter. That was 285, and that was a pretty good match. You talk about that 125-pound match with Dean Peterson and Steve O'Poulin. I told you after I saw my boy from Okie State, Joyce Spratley, go down, I said Dean Peterson's going to beat Steve-O. He's going to be Steve O'Poulin. He's going to do it. And I knew that. I knew that Peterson was going to get it. And Peterson won 4-2. It wasn't a heavy win. It was like a 4-2. It was fairly close. A takedown away, as we like to, as we call it, not with these 3-point takedowns. And then at 133 pounds, we had Evan Frost versus the number 6 Evan Frost versus the number 3 Drake Ayala. And Evan Frost won 11-5. And I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised by the way that match came out. I wasn't surprised because for many of the reasons I wasn't surprised is because I knew Evan Frost could do it. Like I said, I don't think Drake Ayala is going to be able to beat Frost. I've seen Frost wrestle quite a few times, and I knew that Drake Ayala wasn't going to do it. He's and seeing a couple matches from Paycom National Duels with Drake Ayala, I knew that Drake Ayala, he's good, but he's got flaws. And Evan Frost was able to go right through him. When you get an 11-5, that's not a 1-point lead. That's a big win. That's a 5-point win right there. Really at 6-point, but a big win. Now we're going to move on to 141. The number 6, Anthony Echmendia against the number 7, Nazir Bailey. Now, Anthony Echmendia won 15-2. And this is what we talked about. Remember, we said this, the bonus points, that Iowa State was going to have to get a lot of bonus points when it came to this event. They were going to have to get a lot of bonus points because, for the past 21 years, past 20 duels, I believe. So I think it's 21 years, 20 duels. Iowa has won. A long win streak. So it's something that you say, hey, we got to kind of figure it. The bonus is going to make the difference. And Anthony Echmendia got a major decision over the number 6. Anthony Echmendia got a major decision over the number 7, Nazir Bailey, 15-2. Which, listen, when you see the matches like this, I'm not going to extensively break it down because they have other channels for that. I'm going to specifically tell you this right off the bat. We don't really do that, where they kind of show the video and they break down you got to take down here. That was a good. They break down the turns and that. I'm just going to highlight, we always do something way, and I highlight good matches. If you didn't see it, you should see it. When somebody wins 15-2, when they're the number 6 and it's the number 7, I've told you multiple times before, ranking don't matter. Obviously it matters in terms of seeding, in terms of added tournaments, but if you're the underdog, it don't really matter. If you're going to win, you can win. You know, if you're gonna win, you can win, kind of thing. And with that being said, Anthony Etrandia, which we knew Anthony Etrandia was really good, you know, really, really good. He's a great wrestler. 15-2 victory tells you a lot. It tells you a lot. 15-2, and you hold Nazir Bailey, who has been able to score to only 2 points, only 2, which means, you know, only 2 points. That's an interesting one there, and that's another one I would say you want to see that. So here's what, you know, was a really, 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 really good one. If you didn't see this 149, this is good. This was an overtime tiebreaker. And anytime you have overtime and a tiebreaker, you know what you can learn from that? There's either really good defense and there's solid wrestling. And that's something you can learn from these overtime. And even if you get into overtime, even then, sometimes the takedown or the escape will be sloppy. So there's that, which you don't learn from. We talked about that sloppy wrestling. You don't want to wrestle sloppy. So at 149, the number 10 rider block took down the number 2 Palmerano Johnson, an ultimate tiebreaker. That's another one I have highlighted here. Yeah, you want to see that. That was a good one. So that was a really good one. You know, anytime you get a match that goes to overtime, there's the most you can learn. I know everybody says, well, you learn from matches when it's a 5-4. Yeah, but when a match goes into overtime, somebody scored up a bunch of points in some cases, and somebody came back. And when you have that, in most cases, you that means that in most cases that somebody scored a bunch of points, somebody came back. And I say that because that's what it means. So it's a real tough situation right there of, yeah, this looks good. So in situations like that, it looks good to learn from those matches if somebody goes overtime, because you can learn from those. They're very good matches that you can learn from when people go into overtime. So that's another thing I like to tell you is you can learn from those overtime matches. Those overtimes you can learn from. You could really learn from them. And that's why I say that that 149 is one that you want to look at. So if you're somebody that, you know, has trouble turning, I would say let's look at that 141 Anthony Etrandia. Look at how many turns there. It was a 15-2. 15-2. So look at that. You want to look at that. Even if it's a takedown, let him up situation, you still want to look at it because, you know, you can learn from that. And when you have 15-2, you could tell it wasn't a lot of letting up. And when you get a 4-2 Dean Peterson Steve-O, that was another good one. I would say take a look at that. How Steve-O was able to fade out against Steve-O Poulin was able to fade out against Dean Peterson. You know, so let's look at that. You know, if we move on down the line in order, at 157 we had number 3 Vinny Serbin. He got a major decision over number 12 Jordan Williams. You know, we talked about this. We talked about the majors, and they were going to make a lot of difference. And we said this, you know, that it was going to make a lot of difference. And it was going to be really good. And we talked about that some of those weights were going to be real different. But you talked about there why this didn't go the way Iowa hoped. You know, you had Vinny Serbin, who came out and did exactly what you would expect. You had you had Paul Morano that you thought was going to win, that got upset against the number 10 rider. You had Anthony Etrandia that got bonus, which we talked about. You know, we're going to need bonus somewhere, and Drake Ayala lost, so they probably did not expect Evan Frost to win and Anthony Etrandia to get that major. But at 165, we talked about this. We knew Michael Caliendo was going to get a lot of bonus, and he did. He got a tech fall. And we talked about that you cannot let the tech fall go. But this is one that really surprised me because we talked about MJ Grayton. We said MJ was going to have to wrestle. MJ wrestled. That's another, that 174-pound match. If you didn't see it, you need to be looking at it. You know, the number 11 in the country, MJ Grayton, beat number 2 Patrick Kennedy. That is the biggest deficit of an upset because, 149 Ryder Block was the number 10. This is a number 11. And the difference is that was a 9-8. So, we talked about when you have a high score like that, somebody scored up, somebody came back. So I would say 174 is another one you want to be looking at that. Michael Caliendo with a tech fall. Like I said, if somebody turns a lot, you can learn from it. But the focus is that 174 where MJ Grayton, he did exactly. We talked about this, that somebody was going to have to come in and steal the show. And MJ Grayton definitely stole the show because he took down the number 2, Pat Kennedy. At 184, I was kind of a little disappointed. I don't say that it shouldn't be. Isaac Dean did a good job because Angelo Ferrari did not get bonus, which, I kind of thought Angelo Ferrari was going to get bonus. And I thought Angelo Ferrari was going to get bonus. Also, all these rankings I've called out are by Intermat. The Intermat, that's the Intermat ranking. So, I thought that it wasn't. I thought we're gonna have some bonus from Angelo Ferrari. I really did. I thought Angelo Ferrari was gonna get a few turns on Isaac Dean, but Isaac Dean, the number 10 Isaac Dean, came out and really showed some good wrestling. Like, you lost, but you lost 2-1. Like, if you're gonna lose, that's the best way to lose, is 2-1, where you're not giving up any bonus whatsoever. Because now you don't give up any bonus and you lose only 2-1. So that's a good loss if you're Isaac Dean, a 2-1. That's a really good loss. And honestly, it made the difference in the team score because had Angelo Ferrari got bonus, you say if he had got if Angelo Ferrari had got you at least say a major, that would have been 15-20. If he got a tech fall, that would have been 16-20. So we talk about that. And then the difference where it really would have went is this 197, the last match at 197. That Rocky Elam, number 2 Rocky Elam versus number 4 Masoma and Dean. Rocky Elam won 8-2. And he absolutely shut down Masoma and Dean. You could tell that Rocky Elam was high caliber. And I'm not saying that this is I think if you're Masoma and Dean, if you're in Dean, you can learn a lot from this match, that the competition is going to be high. Now, don't get me wrong. Anybody can get beat. Rocky Elam is the number 2. Rocky Elam's really good. But here's where I say, hey, this is kind of a bridge point, almost. I don't want to say a bridge. Like, I kind of say it's like a kind of a measure point here that, hey, I wasn't able to kind of get a close match against Rocky Elam. I was able to give up 8 points. I would have expected, I expected that match to be like Angelo Ferrari and Isaac, a 2-1. I expected it to be super close. Or even I expected it to be like MJ Grayton, a 9-8 ultimate tiebreaker 1. A tiebreaker, not ultimate tiebreaker, but a tiebreaker. I would have expected it to kind of be, a 2-1, really close, but it was 8-2. So Rocky Elam really got out there and did what he had to do, and Iowa State snapped it. I think we talked about that this Iowa group was going to be a really good wrestling group, and I think in this dual meet it really did. Now they were able to get through Oki, which it's looking like. I can't speak to really what happened in that dual meet, to really near and dear, really what went on with Oki, but it's looking like Iowa just kind of Iowa didn't really show up. You got a lot of guys that you thought, I thought Dean was going to have a closer score. I thought there was going to be a lot more overtime in this. I give Michael Caliendo credit at 165. He got another tech fall. And we talked about that. But MJ Grayton, the number 11, to take down Pat Kennedy? Who would have ever expected that? I mean, obviously, I was saying, I would like it to happen. But Iowa got taken down, and Iowa showed that they're not that strong, that they got to, it's not a runaway. And I think in terms of that, I think we look at how they're going to dual meet Faye with Penn State. I think we say Kale Sanderson's got this one because if Iowa wrestles like that, Iowa did not wrestle well. Let me tell you, except for some of the guys that got upsets. Like we talk about Ryder Block wrestled very well. We talk about Michael Caliendo wrestled well. Angelo Ferrari, not so much. 2-1 against number 10. I kind of felt that wasn't well. Dean Peterson, though, that he wrestled well. He wrestled well. I even say with Angelo Ferrari, for his style, a 2-1, I feel like he didn't wrestle well, but Iowa did not wrestle well. Iowa did not wrestle well. Let me tell you, Iowa did not wrestle this well. Some of the wins they got, like Ben Cuter went down via decision, which, I mean, the best thing you can, 11-4. But we talk about Drake Ayala didn't even wrestle well. You let Evan Frost beat you by 6 points. I would have expected. I expected the Frost Ayala to go overtime. I expect that to go. I expect that to go overtime. I expected Steve-O and Dean Peterson. I expect that to be. I knew Dean was going to win, but I knew Steve-O was pretty good. I expected that ultimate tiebreaker. Iowa did not wrestle well in terms of this dual meet. They really didn't. This is not the same Iowa that came up against Okie State. Okie State, they came out there and they were like, oh, we want to beat David Taylor. They came out clubbing and clubbing and clubbing and clubbing against David Taylor. They weren't there during this dual meet, but it was a good one for Iowa State. They came out, they got it. They got it. And the crazy part is nobody expects something like that. You don't expect that to go down like that, especially when you got especially when you're home too. For Iowa State, Iowa State they were home. They were home. They were home for the dual meet, and they were determined to not let Iowa beat them at home this year, and they didn't lose. And you know how that happens? Because Iowa didn't wrestle well. They're Iowa very well. Iowa State, when you look in terms of the dual meet, there was a lot of matches where you looked in at where I looked and said, it's going to be a difficult Cy-Hawk duel here. Like I will run it through with you. Dean Peterson at 125 ain't one of them. Younger 285 is not one of them. 133, Drake Ayala, and all the other doing just very well. I expected Drake Ayala to get in there and I picked Evan Frost to win, but if you're talking in terms of Cy-Hawk duel in your Iowa, you expected Drake Ayala to get a victory. And then you expected Nazir Bailey not to go down by major decision to Anthony Etchmandia. Ryder Block sure did his job. You say, hey, you came out and you beat Johnson. Even if it wasn't in overtime, you beat him. And then you let Vinny Servin get a major decision over Jordan Williams. That's what we talked about. The reason why Iowa State won this duel meet is the bonus. Look at the bonus. Anthony Etchmandia, major decision. Anthony Etchmandia, major decision. I just said that. Anthony Etchmandia got a major decision. Vinny Servin, major decision. Let's see. Like, that made the difference. They had 2 major decisions. And for Iowa, let's go through and see how many bonus points Iowa got. So you talk about it. We know Iowa got the bonus points of Michael Caliendo. And that was the only bonus points they got. That in terms of that, Iowa State wrestled well. Iowa did not. Like, Michael Caliendo is the only person that got bonus. Like, that's crazy. Drake Ayala just was shut down by Evan Frost. I get he still put up 5, but to lose by 6 points, you got shut down. You talk about another one that got shut down. MJ Grayton shut down Patrick Kennedy. I mean, not. I mean, well. I'm gonna take that one back because that was a 9-8 tiebreaker. That's not the one I meant. There was one I was looking for. Oh, yeah, I know what I meant. Rocky Elam shut down and Dean. And Isaac Dean, he didn't shut down Angelo Ferrari, but he wrestled very well to the point where Angelo could only get 2 points, which means he prevented Angelo from really. Nobody got a takedown in that match. He prevented Angelo from getting anything more than he wanted. He really did, and that's a good thing. If you're Isaac Dean, you didn't go down by a lot, and that's a really good thing. This is what I'm talking about. That this was a really, really, really good dual meet in terms of everything. That when we talk about this dual meet, we talk about how good it was, how great everything went, and that was one of the reasons why I say it was a really good dual meet because Iowa State, for the past 20 matches, 21 years, has not been able to win. They have not been able to win this dual meet. The Cyhawk duel has always gone to Iowa, 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 Iowa. Now you talk about in the Cyhawk showdown, the Cyclone won this year. And that is a really interesting one because now that Iowa team that was very well exposed because it was a 2014 dual meet, it was not close. It was no 18-19 or no 20-18. 18. It was Iowa got shut down there. They were held to 14 points only. You talk about that, and you say to yourself, when they face Okie State again, they're not going to beat them. They're not going to beat them. They beat them at Ultimate Club duels. They wrestled well there, but you're not going to beat Okie State when you come to that dual meet. Because first of all, if I'm correct, and you know what, as they say, if I'm correct, I'm just going to look it up. But I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up before I okay. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up. It is at Gallagher Arena. So first and foremost, Okie is home. I'm telling you, I'm calling it right now. Iowa's not going to win that dual meet if they wrestle how they did against Iowa State. They're not going to win that dual meet. You got to get a lot more bonus points. Angelo Ferrari cannot win a 2-1 match against a number 10 in the country. That tells you the number 10 in the country is very scrappy. And if you're only it's more than that. It's just more than that. There's like and like MJ Grady went out there and got it done. And you talk about that with Iowa State, they were able to get it done. And that's why I say, it just if you're Iowa, you can't have that. You got to wrestle well. You got to wrestle. You got to wrestle well. You got to wrestle well. You can't have that. You just can't. It was a great dual meet, and I talked about how it was going to be a good dual meet. But when I tell you that Iowa did not wrestle well, it shows in team score, 20-14. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of those matches was very close, and you feel some of those matches were very close, but it came down to the little things. And there were a few of those matches where you say, hey, you expect that it wasn't going to happen, but it was more than enough where you say, okay, hey, it was not a good dual meet for Iowa. And I felt like you didn't wrestle well. Although anybody else will probably beg to differ on that one. They'll say, no, Iowa wrestled well. You had a couple matches go to ultimate tiebreaker, and go to tiebreaker, overtime. I keep saying ultimate tiebreaker, but overtime. Couple matches go to overtime, and it truly is something. And to sit there and say that, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy that to get there and say, hey, it absolutely is something that's, who would have thought Iowa was going to allow themselves to get beat like that? I told you this was going to be a good old-fashioned Penn State, Ohio State, like a 20-19 or 20-18 dual meet. I was very surprised it didn't go like that, but it had that vibe every match. Like, it had that vibe. I strongly encourage, if you didn't see it, it was on ESPN, which I think that was a great dual meet to be on ESPN. I think that was good dual meet to be on ESPN because you got two go to tiebreaker, Michael Caliendo with the tech fall. You had Dean Peterson come out and get it done against Steve-O, which was when I tell you that in terms of this, there were very few matches that were runaway. Let me tell you how many matches where they were runaway. So you had 285. You had 130, 133 wasn't even really a runaway, 6 points, but, kind of. That was okay. If you count that, that's 2 right there. Anthony Etchman-D is 3. Michael Caliendo's 4. And that's it. I mean, some would say Rocky Elam, but Rocky Elam, the way the match went, it wasn't really a runaway, but that would be 5. Only half the matches were kind of, and even that 133, 11-5, do you really even count that? Like, there was little, like, let me tell you in total how many majors we had. 1, 2. I mean, in total, bonus or major. We had only 3 bonus or major through the whole dual meet between both teams. That's a good dual meet. That every match is not a major one way or the other. It's decision. That's a good dual meet. And that was on ESPN on a Sunday. They're going to do that again. And I think it says at the bottom, it was 12,292 was the attendance. They're going to do that again. When I tell you they're going to do that again, they're going to do that again. And the dual meet wasn't even really a runaway. If Iowa would have got a couple more majors, they would have very well been in that dual meet too. 1 fall would have made the difference for Iowa. 1 fall would have made the difference. We talk about that, and that is truly, absolutely crazy. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy, the way that dual meet went. And I'm telling you, that's exactly what we thought here in the Cy-Hawk duel. That's exactly what we thought in the Cy-Hawk duel. That it went just like that. Like, I'm not surprised. I'm not even like, and I said it's going to take a lot for Iowa State to win this dual meet. And when I said that, I meant it. And then you come out and you find out Iowa just doesn't wrestle. Like, I mean, you wrestled well, but you needed bonus. You're getting beat places where you a powerhouse. This same team that took down David Taylor's Okie State and did it well. But the hype is over. And, I think in terms of Okie State, they will not lose to them again. I talked about that, and it's just not going to happen. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be wrong. This Iowa team has been figured out by Iowa State, and it just ain't going to go the way they think. It ain't going to go the way they think anymore, and that's crazy. That you would have thought that was a strong Iowa team, and to see that the way that went, I was, I kind of wanted Iowa State to win, but I was still shocked at the fact that Iowa State actually pulled it off. So that is all I got for you on this week's Takedown Thursdays. I broke down that Iowa State. This is what we talk about, that doesn't matter what your rank is as a team, anybody can be beat. If you're home, you got your fans and you got some crowd and you've got that momentum, you can do it. And that's exactly why Iowa State wanted to start at 285. They're talking about that. They couldn't agree upon what weight to start, so they flipped. They flipped for choice, and Iowa started at 285. And you know why they started 285? Very well, so that the heavyweight wouldn't come down to the last match, and it would come down to, hey, you need a major, you need this. Let him set the tone early, and come out front, and he did just that. He did just that. He did just that. So that being said, this is the weigh-in by Benoit Chestnut and the occasional pop-in Sebastian Romero, and that is this week's Takedown Thursday. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'm going to continue putting these videos out for y'all. So with that being said, that's it. That's all I got for you. Weigh in, out.
The way in my story.